Good morning and welcome to Unique Peace. I am Janice. I am the Quiet Healer. I am a Reiki Master Teacher and self-care coach here on Long Island, New York. And today I'm excited to be joined by Tammy Vincent. She is a life coach and a licensed LPN. And she is also the host of Adult Child of Dysfunction, where she talks and she helps others overcome the dysfunction of growing up in an addicted household. And we'll touch on that in a minute. So I want to welcome Tammy to the show. Everybody say hi. Good morning, Tammy.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And how are things in your neck of the woods?
Oh, good. I'm down in Florida, so it's warm. It's
It's
nice.
warm,
It's
yes.
sunny. Always.
So, as noted in the introduction, you are an LPN and a life coach. So, kind of walk us through your journey. What came first, and how did you go from one step to the next?
Well, I started actually just, I'm going to make a quick correction real quick because it's an NLP practitioner,
Oh
not
my
an
God.
LPN. So I'm not an actual licensed nurse, but I do have an NLP certification, and I got that in my own healing journey. So I did grow up, as you mentioned, I grew up with two alcoholic parents. So I grew up with all of the dysfunction and all of the just negative mindset insertions, I guess you could say, all those things that are given to you while you're growing up. And it took me years to kind of unravel all of that. And in that, I acquired a whole bunch of tools. So I figured now at this point in my life, I might as well share those tools with people, because getting to that better place does not have to take 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It can literally be done in a couple hours. It can be done in a couple months. I mean, just progress can be made every day if you just have the right tools.
And you've acquired those tools. So, as you move through your journey, how did you get started? Let's start at the beginning. You grew up in this very dysfunctional dynamic, as many have, and you said, "No, this isn't my life. I'm not going to share this with anybody else. I'm going to help people move past this." So, what was that switch? How did you?
There was obviously a lot of hints along the way, and people, even when I got married, people would say to me, it's not normal that people talk to you that way. It's not normal that people treat you that way. And it's okay for you to stand up for yourself. And I was like, no, it's good. I'll just do what people ask me to do. And I don't want to rock any boats. I don't want to make any waves or anything like that. And then I got pregnant with my first son. And I was like, wow, I don't want him to be the way I am. I don't want him to grow up thinking he has no voice, thinking he's just going to coexist with everybody else in the world, trying to not make waves and not, rock any boats. And so I went, it was actually, I tell this story a lot, but I was reading the book, Love You Forever. I don't know if you've ever read that book.
There's that book needs to come with a warning label because before my son was born, I was reading and I'm like, I can't read this to a kid.
It was
But I know the history behind the book now, which is very powerful.
right. And the book, it's just for those of you that haven't read the book, it's a story about a mother's unconditional love for her son, and how she kind of walks through all these phases of life, singing to him the same song about how she loves him and she'll love him forever. And at the end, she's old and frail, and the tides are kind of turned. Now he's
Yeah.
holding her. And
Yep.
he's singing the same song, but instead of my baby you'll be, it's my mommy you'll be. So he's kind of reciprocating that unconditional love. And I was in my rocking chair about 7 months pregnant, and it dawned on me, I have no clue what that even means. And that it was such a wake up call to me. It was, how am I going to do this? I have no idea. I don't have any memories of hugging my mom. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what unconditional love felt like. So I did the only logical thing. I went out and bought a puppy. I thought, what a test
This'll
of the
help.
human, right? I was like, well, if I can't even love a puppy, like an innocent puppy, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to learn how to love a child. Like, I just didn't know if I even had it in me at that point. And that is what jump started my journey. Like, it hit me with like a 2x4. There was subtle hints all along the way, But then when I would go to the library, of course, there wasn't the internet back then. So I would go to the library and I would sit down and I would just pour through these books. I would literally sit in the corner and just read everything I could get my hands on and just cry. And, you know, I freaked out. Let's be
Be
honest.
honest.
I had like what I consider a mental breakdown. So I started therapy. I started going to Al-Anon meetings. I just did everything I could do. I poured myself into everything. And along that way is when I really realized, like Al-Anon, it's like, yes, you deal with these alcoholic parents and you deal with these alcoholics and these addicts in your life, but it's all about taking care of you.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't even do that because I don't even know how to do that. So there was so much to learn. So through therapy and all of these different modalities of going to, back then it was coaching, but really it was more just support groups. They
Yeah.
didn't really actually call it coaching.
They didn't know.
It was just support groups. So you met with people that had similar issues and you talked through it. And then I started getting into more formalized training because then I was like, okay, now I really was on a mission because I learned about how you could self-hypnotize yourself into these thinking, changing your mind shifts and how, you could do inner parent or inner child work and go back and really get to love yourself so that you can give that same love to your children, your spouse, or whoever it was. So it was, that was the like I say, the 2x4 that hit me, but that was my wake up call. That was if I don't do something now, my kids, basically everybody that is close to me in my life is going to suffer or just be affected by me. And I didn't want to do that. I knew I had developed a lot of bad habits and bad mindset, and I wanted to switch it.
And so you found the NLP program or it found you?
Combination of both. When I would start to really do some of these I guess you could say mind shift hacks on myself, where I was like, oh no, I can convince myself. Like if I can learn how to get in touch with my inner child, I can convince myself that what happened didn't really happen, or it happened in a different way. I realized through my psychologist or therapist or whatever that I was a very big dissociator. So I would there were many, many times of my life that I would step outside of myself and watch things happening to me. And I knew that. So then when I really started thinking about these things, things started coming up that my version of the story was not necessarily someone else's version of the story that was right there. And I realized your mind is going to fill in the version of the story if you don't remember it, or if you were so dissociated that you really weren't even there. So I started thinking to myself, well, why not just make up the story right? Why not make it up? Like, if I don't know what really happened anyway, why not just convince myself that it happened a different way? And that's when someone said to me, oh, that sounds like NLP. And I was like, huh, what's that? And they explained, neuro-linguistic programming, and a lot of it is really changing the meaning of the words and changing the meaning of how things happen. And I got very interested in it. So that is kind of what set me on that journey. And of course, that's not even a large portion. I mean, a lot of the techniques that are used in NLP, like anchoring different feelings and different emotions to different circumstances, and just giving things new meaning and visualization, and all of that was all kind of just integrated into everything that I was doing with the inner child work and the shadow work and all of that. The NLP just kept coming
up.
Good techniques. It's good practices that are used in many more areas. It's just all condensed into one title of NLP.
And that in life coaching, so you're a life coach as well. So how do you integrate your NLP with life coaching? Is that part of the technique? Is that part of just who you are and how you work?
It's honestly become more of just who I am and how I work. And, I can have a client who is having let's just say anxiety over going to a new job, because she just feels like everything, when she walks into the new job, everything is stressing her out and everybody's looking at her. And she's just got that, underlying sense of I'm not good enough. So sometimes I'll be like, well, tell me what happened. And a good example is she said, yeah, I walked in, it was like my first day, and this lady literally looked at me and her eyebrows went up, and I immediately felt like I wasn't going to be good enough to do this job. And I immediately felt this woman was judging me. And I was like, okay, well, let's just, let's slow down. What else could it have meant? Did she say she didn't like you? Did she say that you weren't doing your job? And she's like, no, she just raised her eyebrows like at me funny, and it gave me this pit in my stomach. I'm like, okay, well, let's close our eyes. Let's think about that. Let's give it a new story. Maybe she had an itch on her eye. Maybe she was questioning, maybe she was loving your shirt. I mean, whatever it needs to be. It doesn't necessarily mean that you weren't doing your job right. So let's give it new meaning. So it's just questioning, in that situation, it was just questioning one small, simple act and giving it new meaning. And then that way, next time someone raised their eyes, after some practice, if she had, used that specific example over and over again, next time someone raised their eyebrows at her, she might have thought, oh, their eyes are itchy, or oh, they must have allergies, or whatever positive thing or different meaning she gave to it. It starts to become muscle memory, and you will start to assign those things to different situations.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, you also work with teens.
Yes.
So, you were called to work with teens. Assuming because of everything you went through, you want to work with that particular section of the world where you're helping them become thriving participants in society, even though family life is hell, for lack of a better term.
Latter, yep. That's a very good term. And, it's not just the alcoholism and the addiction. I mean, now they say that 1 in 5 has at least one addicted parent. But
Mm,
so if you walk into a class of 25 people, that means 5 of them have an addicted parent. But that's not even taking into situation all of the other things that are going on in people's lives right now. Loss of jobs, there's money struggles, there's suicides and drug overdoses, and there's school shootings. There's all this stuff that these kids need to focus on, and they need a place to vent. They need some empowerment. They need some social skills as far as being able to talk and how to communicate. And really, my message to kids is that it doesn't matter what you're going through. One, you're not alone, and two is that you might not have that shining knight in shining armor come and save you and pick you up and swoop you away and rub your head and say everything's going to be okay. So you have to know that you have that inside of you. And that's really my message for kids, is that they have to be their own advocate. They have to be their own knight in shining armor, that they were born divine and amazing, and they're still that person. It's just that life has made them believe differently.
yes.
So
And in a world where there are high standards and you don't feel like, I mean, the media has a way of swaying. So if you're young, that tween to 20, 24, 25, it has a lot of sway. And it's all the negative feelings that people of that age range are feeling are being reinforced. I'm not enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. And I even with my son, he'll say, I can't. It's not I can't. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you can. You just have to apply yourself, or at least try before you say it's not working for me. Or he'll say, I'm not good enough. And it's like, I don't like when he says that, because he's a wrestler. And it's like, I'm not a good enough wrestler. It's like, I say, I don't want to, I tell him, it's like, I try not to correct him, but I do. And it's like, no, you can't say that, because you go out and go on the mat. You put forth the effort. That's more than somebody sitting at home doing nothing is doing.
and
And
and I try to say to kids too, like if someone says, well, I'm not good enough, I say, okay, put yourself in someone else's shoes. Let's say you were your best friend and they were out there on the wrestling mat and you saw them wrestle. What would you think of them? And usually they'll say, oh, I would say, man, they kick butt. They're really good. Well,
yep,
that's you. So treat
treat
yourself
yourself.
like your own best friend. Like, why are we so hard on ourselves, so much harder on ourselves than we will ever be on anybody else?
We are.
We are
And
horrible at it.
we are our own worst critic.
Hmm. And that's because,
Mm.
you, like you said, it's the media and it's everything out there that's sending you this message that your love and your worth is based on performance. And that's my message is, it's not. Your love and your worth is all you. You're just perfect the way you are. And if honestly, if people, you just need to feel free to be yourself, because what happens is you start conforming. And
Mhm.
that's what happens. That's why I end up coaching adults, because they go with this I'm not good enough mentality into adulthood, and then they act on that. They act on that in everything, and they're afraid to speak up for themselves, and they're afraid to be silly and fun because of what people are going to think of them. I remember the day it finally dawned on me that what people think of me is absolutely none of my business.
And how many times have we heard that? I mean, honestly, how many times have we heard that? And I totally agree. But it's also coming to the realization of there have been a couple of instances where my energy and another person's energy just don't mix.
Mm-mm,
And that's perfectly fine. And we can be in an event and I don't have to interact with them and they don't have to interact with me. And we don't need to cause high school drama about it.
mm-mm. No, you're not. Not everybody is going to be your fan. You're not going to be liked by everybody. You're not going to like everybody, and that's normal. Your brain works in great mysterious ways, but those are protection things. Those are keeping. So again, that's one of the other things I work with adults and children is find out who you are, because a lot of times if you spent your entire life conforming, you don't even know who you are. So out of your brain being comfortable, it's going to be drawn to people that are acting like you were told to act. It's going to draw you to that. So because it's comfortable, and your brain would rather be in pain and but comfortable and familiar. So you have to like rewire that. But some people don't even, I remember the first time someone said to me, what do you like to do? I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. And it took a long time to figure that out, to figure what my happy place was.
So, happy places. How do you, we're going to take a little adventure here. How do you personally define peace? Because that always leads, for me anyway, to a happy place.
Peace to me is just being at a state where not that you're just completely content with what comes at you, and you're completely content in yourself with that. So anybody could say something to me and it's okay. If I don't agree, I just don't agree, and I'm okay to say no. We're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. And it's just being at a place where that you're being you.
And that's beautiful. And so, follow-up question to that is how do you find peace? How do you personally in your everyday life find peace?
A lot of time by myself, a lot of time with gratitude, being grateful for the things I do have. I know I've kind of made it a practice before I even once I wake up, as soon as I wake up, just 5 things that I'm grateful for. It could be if I worked really hard the night before, it could be that my feet don't hurt. It could be that I have a roof over my head. It could be that I have 3 amazing children, whatever it is. Because when you start your day with that gratitude, then when things come at you, they don't seem so bad. It becomes, again, it's muscle memory. And that was one of my biggest practices. So if, even though sometimes you can get into hairy, ugly situations, but
Mhm.
find what you're grateful for in that situation. And then it makes everything else kind of just fall into place.
Yes, and it is a very powerful reminder that there is always something to be grateful for.
Yes. And it can be hard in the beginning. When
Mhm.
you're down and out and you're in the throes of it, I've had people say to me, I'm like, well, just be grateful for you have a roof over your head. And they're like, well, I don't always have a roof over my head. Well,
Yeah.
be grateful that that you have a head. I mean, it can be so, like,
So
it seems
simple.
so simple, but there's always something, even just that I have another day, and that whatever I'm going through right now is a moment in time. And I'll get over it. I'll get past it. The old saying, this too shall pass, every
Yep.
moment.
Every
So
moment.
be grateful that the next moment is coming and this is going to pass.
So Angela's out there, and she is a fan of the show, and she said gratitude is everything. Yes,
Yes.
gratitude is everything, and definitely can agree with that statement. Thank you. um, so with gratitude as the starting point for peace for you, the next question is, how do you help others find peace? And you can pick out like a segment of like the adults, the kids, the teens, the tweens. How do you differ the message, or is it still one message? And how do you bring them to that?
It is still somewhat one message of the fact that they're just amazing and they have to get to that and know that they're worth it. But really, I tell them to start just questioning things and just looking at them and using gratitude with everything. I one of my favorite sayings is start looking at life as it's happening for you and not to you.
Mm,
Because when you start doing that and you start questioning and you start being curious about things and then throwing in the coupling that with the gratitude, you'll find that soon you're being grateful for things that don't even have anything to do with you, that are with the people that you're around. And it just brings, the more positive energy you can put into the world, the more positive people you attract back to you.
I love that. And that is true. That is so true.
Yeah. So
Mm,
I tell people,
mm,
one of my favorite things to tell people, if they are, especially if they're just don't know where to start journaling. And I always write letters. If you don't know where to start, just write letters to yourself. Start being aware of your feelings and emotions and what hits you, what strikes you, what triggers you, good, bad, and indifferent, really anything. And it just start writing. I always write letters to myself. And then what I found really made the biggest difference to me is then I would write a response. Because when you start just
oh,
word vomiting and writing a letter, you're writing it to someone and you might not even know who you're writing it to start with. But whoever that turns out to be, now write their response.
interesting. And
Yeah,
very
and kind of
cool.
like with inner child work, they say to do that, write the response with your non-dominant hand.
See, and when I was doing inner child work and with my therapist, they did it was the non-dominant versus the dominant hand in the because I mean I'm a righty, so trying to write with your left hand, it does give that thought process of it's a childlike handwriting, somebody who's in kindergarten learning how to write, um, and then more fluid with the adult hand, so to speak, your dominant hand,
Right.
and it does have a psychological effect. And
It does, and it also opens the other side of your brain up, which we only use a very, very small portion of our brain. So when you're doing something like that, writing is when you write with your dominant hand, you don't have to consciously think about writing.
yeah,
When you're writing with your non-dominant hand, in a way, you have to consciously think about what you're doing, and it's opening up a bigger portion of your brain. So it's opening up creativity. It just is opening up more. So it's
so
it's very powerful. It's fun. It's sloppy, but it's fun.
it's sloppy. It was hard, and I'm type A, borderline neat freak. It was hard. Like it's like I need those. Remember those pads we had with the long line, with the two thick lines and then the dotted line.
Oh yeah.
I need. I that was my own personal requirement because
Oh,
because it was
that's
all
funny.
all over the place.
Oh,
Like I
that's funny.
couldn't write in a straight line, and like when there's no lines on the paper, I can't write it, but at least I can read it. Where it
Right.
was kind of like, well, yeah. So that happened today.
Well, and that brings you right back to the fact that, when you're doing this, especially people that are hard on themselves, give yourself some grace. Who
Yeah,
cares? Who, like, just let it go. That, especially when you're in that creative moment, it does, sometimes you won't even be able to write, but you'll remember as you're reading, you'll remember those words. Like, you might not be able to pick a standalone word out, but you'll remember
wonderful.
what was happening while you were writing. Or sometimes you won't. Sometimes you go back and you look at it 2 weeks later and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I said that. And it's
Right.
amazing.
And what you're saying, aside from the inner child work and like writing a response or just journaling, I do some automatic writing. And it took me a while to personally, surrender to the process because I'm a writer, and I know you are too. You've written a few books, and that is a hard process. Have you ever tried automatic writing?
I have not. So I mean, I don't know if I've done it and it's been getting called something else, like in just doing it. Explain, I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Automatic writing is connecting to the higher self and
Okay.
connecting to the divine, and you're just like, if say you're having a question, you're questioning something, or you're challenging something, or you're like, "Wow, I know the answer is here, but where is it?" You write a question at the top of the page, and the rule really is, once you write that question and you meditate for a couple minutes, you just start writing. Your pen or your pencil
Okay.
is not supposed to leave the paper. You just go, 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 because somewhere in there, not only is everything you're questioning in there, but so somewhere in there is also your answer.
Right. That makes sense.
And it's very important to do the writing, not the typing. That's where
Yes.
people get thrown off, because some people will journal on their computer. I'm old fashioned and I write. And with automatic writing, that is one of the conditions, is you actually physically do it.
I
So
love that. We actually, we have something that we do with this group that I'm with, and just called the silent prayer, the silent prayer. And it's literally, it's almost like the same thing. You ask a question and then you're just there in kind of a very relaxed atmosphere and you just listen. So it's the almost like it would be the same as writing. And if something comes to you while you're listening, you write it down. But that's
absolutely.
kind of like, that was very fun for me to do that. I love those where you just listen. They say just ask a question and listen. Don't try to interject your own thoughts, just listen, which is hard to do.
It absolutely is. And that's why I think so many people get hung up in meditation.
Yes.
Is I can't do this, because then they're letting everything filter in and then get stuck.
Yep.
And you like, just let it go. If it's important, write it down. But otherwise, just let it go.
Just let it flow. And a lot of people too, like I talk to a lot of people that have like severe ADHD and they're like, I don't meditate. I don't find mindfulness. I don't find peacefulness. And I'm like, do you ever walk in the woods? And they're like, yeah. You can put your headphones on and listen to a meditation and walk in the woods. People
Exactly.
have this image of, you got to have your legs crossed and your hands up. And that's not it. It's
It's not
anything
it.
where you're just being and just trying, because sometimes fighting it is harder than anything.
Right. Right.
That you end up doing, you end up getting more stressed out if you're like trying to shut off your mind.
Right. And there are, again, and you definitely know this, and there are different ways. I've meditated while folding my laundry.
Hmm.
You just get lost in what you're doing, and the next thing you know, not only is your laundry folded and half hour is gone, you don't really kind of know where you've been.
Yep. I do the same thing. I make soap and I love making soap. So I'll just sit there in my own little world and just boop, boop, boop. And I'm going through some stuff. And then, but it's like, seems to be a very creative time. And then I'll be done and I'll be like, oh, and then I hit the computer and I'm like, oh, and my mind is like open and ready to go. But it's the same thing. I don't have to be sitting down, complete quiet. I can just be in my own, like you said, in your own little world. That's your world. That's your happy space.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And just take it to the teens, because so many teens nowadays, I'm reading and discovering and even experiencing with my own teenager adolescent, that they're more stressed out than they need to be. They're more depressed than you would anticipate. What ways would you advise them to like bring some peace into their lives? What advice would you give them as a starting point, and just like tactics to move along?
One of the most important things I would say, especially for teens, is to find somebody that you trust, whether it's a friend or somebody, and have somebody to be your life accountability partner, to have somebody that you can just talk to. I know a lot of parents think it's going to be them. And it's nice that we open those questions and have those open conversations and everything with teens, but a teen needs a friend, like they need somebody. And if you're all alone, it can literally be a dog to start with. It could be your literally just, you have to have somebody to voice the words out of what's bothering you. If you hold the words in, I mean, I used to talk to my fish tank when I was little. I know that sounds really weird,
No?
but I knew that if I was holding it in, it was going to eat me alive. So just finds, you have something, somebody or something that you literally can voice the words out loud to. And then start just every day, they have the positive affirmations and all of that stuff, but just know you are worthy. There's a whole, to be happy. You're worthy to be happy. Let me rephrase that. There's a whole system and program, and I don't know what country it starts in, but it's just called the I Am program. And it's like, I am worthy. And it's every day the whole class stands up in there and they say, I am lovable, I am worthy, I am amazing, I am this, I am that. And they say just saying that out loud can flip somebody's day, can flip all of their emotions. But kids nowadays think that they're the only ones out there having these problems. That's, I think, the biggest thing. And they're all suffering alone and in silence. And if they all knew they were in the same group and they all knew they were having the same issues, you will find peace in a group. You will find with camaraderie and just the fact that you're not alone. Because especially when kids, their problem is they're not feeling seen, they're not feeling heard, they're not feeling validated. And they go looking in all the wrong places for that. They go, and if you're in a dysfunctional house and you're not getting it at home, then all of a sudden your turning is into, okay, I'm not worthy to even get that validation, but we all are. So I tell people, have a support group, have somebody that you can trust, a teacher, a friend, anything. And a lot of, you'd be surprised because everybody is out there. A lot of people say, oh, if I go tell somebody this or that, I'm going to get judged, or people in general, I believe, are kind, and we've kind of lost that. And I tell children, especially, to remember that hurt people hurt people. Healthy people don't hurt people. So if somebody, that kind of flips the thing around, if there's a bully out there bullying you, most likely that bully is hurting. So I don't know how many times I've had people who have children that are being bullied and they end up very good friends with that bully because they connect with them on a level knowing that they're hurting. So, it's teaching children self-compassion and compassion. So, but I think kids just need to know that they need to love themselves, that they're worthy of love, and that they're just amazing. And I knew it's hard. It's hard to just be like, oh, you're amazing, but have them listen to podcasts. Like if you have a child, have them listen to some of these podcasts. There's a lot of children out there podcasting about different issues.
There are.
So I know I probably couldn't have said to my son when he was in his depressive state, hey, go listen to this lady on, he'd been like, yeah, Mom, thanks for that. But we're all, it's not easy right now being a child or being an adult or being anybody. But that's what part of life is. And that's why, I coach, resilience and empowerment, because you have to know that you're so worth it. And you also have to decide that you want to be in a better place. It's a choice.
It's a choice.
Absolutely. And every time you come up against a crossroads, it's a choice, and you can choose to be happy or you can choose to be sad. You can, when something happens to you, you can choose to be angry, or you can choose to have empathy for the person that did something to you and walk that route. So, and like I said, the more positive, I'm all about energy. I'm all about sending out positive frequency into the world, and because you get it back when you send it out.
That's beautiful. And I like to ask the last question, what's in your toolbox? So as you're coaching people, as you're coaching teens, as an adult to being resilient, knowing the current state of the world, especially here in the States, and knowing that, some people are going through some stuff. what is, what is the go-to? What do you have in your toolbox, your tackle box, what have you, that you could pull out to help someone find peace? So you've got like a few minutes at the end, and it's like, try this week, try this today.
I usually it's very based specifically on where people are at right at the moment
Understood.
because they're going to need different things. They
Yeah.
might just need a little bit. I mean, I'll do EFT tapping with people, which is like using almost like acupuncture without needles, working with the meridian points, but it's belief systems. So I do have several tools which will literally shift a belief system. It can be in like 7 minutes. Whether you're afraid to fly or you're, having a stressful day at work or whatever it is, I do a lot of EFT tapping with people. Um, a lot of just lived experience. I think that's,
Yeah.
I've been there. So having someone that really, like I said, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. Having empathy for people and being able to meet them there, but also getting them to know that where they are is so temporary, so temporary. And but like I said, I do a lot of EFT tapping. I do a lot of journaling with people. I give them prompts. We do exercises. I do group coaching with people where we get everybody together that just do Q&As.
Oh,
Sometimes because it just helps to have know other people are where you are at.
do like that. And so as you're tailoring it to each individual specifically, what are there any commonalities like with one group? Have you, because I know when I'm coaching, and I've noticed that certain groups, as you know, come together. It's like we've got certain groups where when I do self-care, and it was very funny. It's one of my first groups, all wanted to increase their self-love, where the other group would want to increase their self-worth. And people don't realize those are very subtle differently, but they are different. But one group, they're two different groups and they want the same thing.
Yeah.
So have you encountered that? And is there something that you would advise in that respect that they could all do? Like the Q&A, I understand, but like they could all do.
A lot of it is positive affirmations. That is probably one of the biggest clues because the people that come to me almost 99% of the time, it all boils down to a sense of self-worth. And it boils down to, I'm just not enough. I don't believe I deserve these things. I don't believe I'm worthy to have them. And all of that makes you act like you're not. So you're going to self sabotage in every area of your
Mhm.
life, whether it's money
Mhm.
or relationships, whatever it is, you're only going to get to a level that you think you deserve. So in working with the deserving, it is a lot of journaling, a lot of inner child work. We walk people back through the process of figuring out, because you can, even when someone says, well, you do this because you don't feel like you're worthy, and they go, no, I am. I do these positive affirmations and everything. It's like, yes, but you have to go back to the beginning. You have to go back and figure out where that set in that you weren't, like what made that happen. So that's where we do a lot of like visualization and one sessions where you will literally go back and figure out, you take a trigger or you take a negative emotion and you follow it all the way back. And you can do it in a very relaxed state. It's not hypnosis completely, 100% hypnotized, completely out of there. But if you do it in like a semi hypnotic state, you go back and you open it up and get to where that feeling of unworthiness set in. And that's really something I don't think not any one of my people that I've ever worked with has been 100% feeling that they were worthy to have great things. And there is one of the psychologist, and I forget where I read it, but I use it all the time, where she jokes with people and she says, come in, when they come in, she says, okay, picture your favorite food, or say I feel like a monkey, and how does that make you feel? And it makes you feel happy and warm and fun and fuzzy and all those things. Now say I deserve all good things, and then notice where you feel it in your body.
Mm.
Because if you notice anything, whether it's a little glitch in your stomach, or your chest gets a little tight, or you feel it in your lower back, that feeling of deserving all good things, you don't believe it. So
You
there's
don't feel
still
it
work to
now?
go.
And, Nathaniel Braden is, also says something very, very similar,
Hmm.
and he's the author of The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem.
Yes.
So, he's very, very similar because 'cause he'll have you do sentence completions, and, it's like how you end the sentence is kind of where you're at
Right.
in, how you love yourself. Are you worthy? Um, he goes through the 6 pillars, so it's, are you compassionate to yourself and that sort of stuff. And I love that because then it's like, oh, okay. Fake it till you make it doesn't always work.
No, and that's one thing, especially with children, that you got to let them understand is that when you hold in emotions, it doesn't go away. The problem that caused the emotion will never go away. It just gets stored somewhere in your body. So, you might as well, like, I know when you grow up with especially alcoholic parents, you're not allowed to even have emotions sometimes. I can remember even some of the most joyous times of my life, which I thought were amazingly fun, were stifled because they were like, "What's so funny? Why are you laughing? There's nothing to laugh about. Stop." I'm like, "Okay." So, so it was then wrong to feel happy or sad, but those do not go away. So, even if you, and now you don't have to go to a therapist. There's nothing wrong with therapy. There's not,
No.
you can do it. I say you can't do it alone. If you have a support group, you can do it. It's very hard to do it alone. And
Mhm.
the reason being is because you can do all the positive affirmations in the world. You can say, "I love myself. I'm worthy. I'm good. I do mirror work, look in the mirror and say, I love you, Tammy. I love you." But until you're having somebody really walk you back and figure out why you developed that in the beginning, when the rubber hits the road and you got to make a split decision, you're making it from your subconscious mind. And that subconscious mind is going to make you act what you actually feel, even though consciously you don't. You say you don't. So that's why I say it's always good to have a partner. But you can get started. You can, I tell everybody it seems so simple, but just Google 100 ways to start loving myself. And you're going to have all these articles. Just start reading, start pouring into things that are going to make you positive, that are going to drive positive energy in your direction. And that's
Mhm.
a good place to start, because then you'll get hungry for it. Once you get a feeling of what it feels like to actually have that self-love, you'll love
You
it.
fall down the right rabbit hole. I mean, not all
Hmm.
the rabbit holes are conspiracy theories, but
Exactly.
you fall down the right rabbit hole. I've done it a few times. So,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
I am so grateful that you have been on and you've shared your experiences with us. And you have your own podcast.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So that is actually called, if the podcast is called Adult Child of Dysfunction Thriving After Chaos. And it is just stories of hope and healing. So it's all different things. Because, like I said, my experience was with alcoholism and drug addiction, but that's not everybody's story. I had one girl on there whose mother had 14 different personalities. And so she had to grow up dealing with that. I had a boy on there who now is an author and a speaker, who grew up and he's autistic. So he had to learn those coping skills. So it's just literally stories of hope and healing. Anybody that has gone through a time. And I try to make the titles so that people can kind of understand, if you go to the podcast and like scan through things that might resonate with you. But it's people, and it's also a chance for people that are, most of them are now coaching or therapists or authors or whatever they're doing, because most of them took their pain and are turning it into a purpose and using it for good to help other people. But not all of them. Some people just want to tell their story and don't even realize how much it is helping other people.
Exactly.
So yeah, and I'm
Exactly.
always looking for guests, and I'm always, just whatever. Or if I tell people, if you have somebody you want on there and you want somebody interviewed, let me know and I will find them. I have a lady coming on my interview on the 15th of May because I have a client who had an incestuous relationship with her sibling, and her therapist is not dealing specifically with that. So she's like, I need an expert. So
There you go.
I'm like, okay,
You
we'll get you
found
an
one.
expert. Bring it on. So yeah, so a lot of people, it's people that have been asked, people have certain, they want to hear about how people healed from a cult or healed from, religious control or things like that.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I invite everyone to go over to Tammy's channel and check it out and tell us what you think. And I would also love to hear what you thought of today's episode. And I'm going to put Tammy in the back for a moment in the green room, and we'll be right back. So thank you everyone who joined us this morning and everyone listening on the replay. Thank you, Tammy, for being on. And I hope everyone got some great tips on how to navigate dysfunction and find peace within ourselves. I know I have. And I invite you all to check out Tammy's podcast. And on Wednesday, I have a special guest, Carly. She is coming to us from Australia, and she is going to talk to us about peace and what brings her peace in today's world as a van driving. She lives in a van, so she's going to tell us how that has brought her peace. I look forward to talking to you then. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.